Ironeye, the stoic archer, the beloved child of a group of assassins known only as the Fellowship, a figure of few words, a master of the bow, and, as we discover throughout the game, one of those who live in death. In today's video, I will talk a bit about what I consider to be the best character in Nightreign, his possible connections to Godwin, and the weight of his choices, capable of reshaping the future of the lands between. So, let's begin a journey into self-preservation and death. First, a quick note. As a fan of archers in films and books, the kind who gets chills every time Haldir's archers arrive at Helm's Deep in the Two Towers movie, I was very curious about Ironeye, and he turned out to be a pleasant surprise. First, because he's a great Nightfarer for beginners and solo players, and second, because he is, indeed, a very compelling character. Ironeye seems to be a man of few words, like other Nightfarers, and an assassin feared for his split-second judgment and ability to spot even the most fleeting of the chances to strike. We know he's a member of the mysterious group known only as the Fellowship, a band of professional assassins who take on contracts to eliminate their targets. The Fellowship is feared to the point that many of their victims resort to desperate measures rather than face the cruel fate that awaits. That leads me to believe the Fellowship, much like other assassin guilds portrayed in media, such as the Dark Brotherhood from Elder Scrolls, gives its members plenty of freedom to carry out contracts however they see fit, be it silent and swift or slow and brutal. Ironeye embodies the typical sniper archetype: long-range weapons, minimal physical contact, and the ability to kill silently from afar. Another interesting fact about the Fellowship is that these contracts originated in the lands between, according to the description of the cracked ceiling walks. Which makes everything rather ironic, a society built on faith and order, outsourcing killings to a group of unknown origin, whose members are, well, dead. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What I believe is that the Fellowship was a guild of assassins operating across several regions, including the lands between, and likely took contracts from a wide range of clients, whether from the Golden Order or not. After all, religion has never stopped people from committing crimes. What's clear is that the Golden Order had no idea where these assassins came from, nor that they were those who live in death, but I'll talk more about that later. Even the Duchess acknowledges the group's reputation.
The Fellowship. That's the name of the mercenary outfit you belong to, is it not? You travel around the world, settling conflicts through clandestine acts, masters of assassination. As unsettling as your talents might seem to an outsider, in service to our cause, they are reassuring indeed.
The first bit of information we get about Ironeye comes in the form of a letter from Isolde, his custodian, asking the archer to wait for updates on a new contract, this time in the lands between. Ironeye, beloved child of the Fellowship, we have received word from Beatiar that you have fulfilled your duty. Your compensation is on its way. Remain at your present location. A new, substantial task will soon be upon you, which will likely require a journey to the lands between. Details to follow. What can we learn from this first chapter of Ironeye's journal? The Fellowship has a clear hierarchy, and that Isolde serves as Ironeye's superior, responsible for his missions, payments, and possibly his training. The term custodian refers to someone who has the responsibility of protecting or caring for someone or something. There's even a respectful bond between Master Isolde and her disciple Ironeye, with apologies and praise exchanged in their letters. Later, another letter from Isolde confirms Ironeye's next task in the lands between, providing more details. His goal is to pursue and retire a traitor to the Fellowship, whose name remains unknown at this point. The traitor was responsible for the destruction of a boarding house in Duskin Valley, an unfamiliar location for players and likely outside the lands between. This chapter reveals a few intriguing points: the use of the word retire, which suggests that death may not be the intended outcome by the Fellowship, and that the Fellowship doesn't interfere with how contracts are executed. Standard protocol applies, even when the target is a traitor. In other words, members of the group are free to act however they see fit. And so it was, with full freedom to choose his path, that Ironeye finds an unlikely ally, the priestess, our duchess, eventually reaching the Round Table Hold. It's only in Chapter 4 that we begun to truly understand Ironeye's situation. The traitor is referred to as the monster, possibly a criminal of such notoriety that he earned a title of his own. The death of his custodian in the Duskin Valley incident is what leads Isolde to believe that the traitor and the monster are one and the same. Even more important is this line from Isolde: "Take every precaution. He was raised by the Fellowship to be the Centipede Scion he is, after all." But what exactly is a Centipede Scion? The word Scion is often used to refer to an heir, someone of noble lineage or a chosen vessel to carry on a legacy. In the case of Nightreign, I believe the term is more closely tied to the idea of someone chosen for a meaningful role, a vessel meant to carry forward the Fellowship's legacy. At this point, the player doesn't fully grasp what it all means. But the word Centipede stirs a memory tied to death. In any case, Ironeye completes his mission and confronts the traitor, the monster, who is defeated under the name Night Huntsman. With him, we receive a letter, the traitor's letter, still sealed with wax. A seal bearing the Fellowship's symbol, a crossbow in the center, surrounded by a sort of centipede, or, as the cracked seal in wax relic description states, the stamp signifies an assassin's oath. We already know the centipede is a symbol of death, but what exactly does that mean? The letter, as it turns out, was a specific contract assigned to the traitor. His mission had been to defeat the Night Lord, something he ultimately failed to do. When the Night Lord nears, meet at the Round Table. If this was a contract, that means someone outside the Fellowship commissioned it. Someone paid for it. This individual wanted to see the night brought to an end, and order restored to the lands between. And since the Nightfarers' stories are related, in some form to the past of the Cutting Gifted tribe, it's likely that this contractor was someone also related to the tribe. After all, who better to handle such a critical mission than a guild of assassins bound by contracts and fear for their deadly precision? What I also believe is that this was a contract with goals that did not align with certain members of the Fellowship, members who, as we will later learn from Ironeye's story, had no real interest in ending the endless night. Things remain confused until Ironeye unlocks a new remembrance, and with it, a chapter containing Isolde's blood-stained letter and the traitor's confession. It is in Isolde's letter that we finally learn who the Scions of the Fellowship truly are, fated to be disposed of once they play their part. Thus, I had a dream, to wrest the power of the night and bend the rules which govern our realm. The Scion's race would wander through an endless night, fighting on and on, a night that would never break, for their sake I desire. It becomes clear that Isolde's desires were the opposite of what the Fellowship stood for, and perhaps that's why she waited so long to confess who the traitor truly was. To her, the monster wasn't a simple traitor. The desire to be free was genuine, and she shared the same dream. But it is a dream most foolish. I should never have mentioned it to you. Free yourself of your misgivings and walk the path in which you believe. Ever your custodian, Isolde. But such a confession has a price. Ironeye now has a choice: fulfill the Fellowship's mission and end the endless night, restoring order to the lands between, or follow Isolde's dream and discover more about who he is, and why the night must continue. A side note, the letter Ironeye receives is stained with blood. What could that mean? We don't have much information, but one possible theory is that Isolde wrote it with blood on her hands after a fight, perhaps with another member of the Fellowship, who uncovered her betrayal. This is hinted at by a single line from the traitor.
Of course the Fellowship would send someone after me. They kill anything and everything that stands in their way. This is no different.
Showing that the Fellowship is a ruthless group that doesn't forgive betrayal. Ironeye is left conflicted. He meets the traitor in the crypt, close to the Duchess, who watches everything closely. But then something happens. When the archer tries to kill the traitor, he fails.
Didn't quite manage it, did we? You should know as well as anyone, we can't be killed so easily. Find an edge of order, and I'll let you in on a little secret.
The Edge of Order is a fragment of the spear of Fulgor, champion of Nightglow, the centaur trapped in eternal night, forsaken by his gods. His blade holds sacred traces, capable of killing, once and for all, those who live in death. I talk about Fulgor in a separate video, where I argued that his blade is likely tied to the gods he once served, and that he may have come from a tribe that viewed those who live in death as a threat. After all, creatures touched by death didn't rise with Godwyn. With the fragment in hand, Ironeye can finally defeat the traitor, and with that learn the truth about what it means to be a Scion.
I'll tell you what you want to know. You and I, all of us, are already dead. But our curse does not allow us to rest. As those who live in death, we could not rest until the Night Lord was defeated. Battle was not suffering, but pleasure. Until you have undergone the same. You have the same eyes. What will you do?
Was that Isolde's true wish for the Fellowship? That they would not kneel to the world, but instead take the power of the night from themselves? That even if night was dangerous, it would bring not suffering, but pleasure for those who live in death? Ironeye presses forward, with no doubts about his decision. Fear not, master, my mind is clear. After defeating Hailstorm, the Night Lord, Ironeye faces a final choice: offer the Night Lord's rune and restore things to how they were during the time of the Shattering, or destroy the corpse with his dagger, breaking the vessel of the rune and ending the dream of those who did not represent him. But Ironeye's mind is already made up. He clutches the dagger, putting an end to the dream of all those who did not represent him. Isolde, my custodian, you were the finest guardian one could hope for. I desired freedom from the yoke of the Fellowship, only because you showed me it was possible. I have only gratitude for you, master. For now, my night shall never end. Ironeye decides the night must go on, freeing his kin from the suffering, or from death itself. And in a bittersweet moment, he makes it clear the Duchess was mistaken.
I'm surprised to learn the truth of your natures. However, we strive for the same purpose. I need nothing more.
But why did he make such a selfish decision? Who is Ironeye really? First, let's remember, the Fellowship is made up of those who live in death, as explained by the traitor and reflected in the centipede symbol on their sigil. The centipede is the symbol of the outer god of death. We often find golden centipedes near areas tied to those who live in death, and they were even kept as a fetish by Golden Order fundamentalists, especially the hunters of those who live in death. In fact, we use the golden centipede to craft the sacred order pot, which states, highly effective against those who live in death, even preventing them from rising again. The golden order has no mercy for those who trespass beyond life's bounds. Naturally, the curse mark of death, found on Ranni the witch's body, takes the form of a half-wheel centipede. We know the curse mark split in two when two demigods perish at the same time. Ranni was the first of demigods whose flesh perished, while the Prince of Death perished in soul alone. And speaking of the Prince of Death, it becomes clear in Nightreign that those who live in death existed before Godwyn. We had already suspected this from what we knew about the Death Birds, envoys of the Altar God of Death, and the Tibia Mariners in Shadow of the Erdtree, which hinted that death cults existed centuries, perhaps millennia before the age of the Erdtree, before death was confined by Marika, which lead us to believe the cult of death survived in other parts of the world, beyond the lands between. That might explain why Fulgor's weapon is imbued with sacred power capable of killing those who live in death. What's curious, and surprised everyone who saw Ironeye's true form, especially when Bonfire VN showed him without the mask, is that Ironeye is human, surprisingly handsome even. The fact that he's not a skeleton or a decaying corpse makes the concept of those who live in death even more intriguing. It suggests there are other forms besides skeletons, deathbirds, worm faces, or basilisks. There are humans who think, feel, and live normally. And that would explain a lot. Perhaps the ending Godwyn once desired, the Age of the Duskborn, was a valid possibility. A new order made not of mindless undead husks, but of beings hunted by the Golden Order simply for being aberrations. It wouldn't be so different from what the Altar God of Rot wants, to form a new order of beings transformed by the Scarlet Rot, but who still deserves to live, no matter what they have become. Maybe Godwyn knew of sapient creatures who lived in death. Maybe his goal wasn't only to spread death through Deathroot, but to give those beings a mind. Fia, as Godwyn's voice in the world, likely knew this. It's clear the two communicated, and that Godwyn was aware of what happened around him. His soul is gone, yes, but maybe that didn't mean he was mindless. Godwyn, for instance, is capable of protecting Fia if the player attacks her in the presence of his corpse.
Hark, Round Table. Disturb not the death of Godwyn, the Exalted. We, who humbly live in death, live in waiting. To one day, welcome our Lord. What right does anyone have to object? Our Lord will rise. The Lord of the many and the meek.
Ironeye thought the same way. By killing the vessel of the rune that would restore the world, his goal was to preserve his kind, to allow those who live in death to live free from persecution in the endless night. And one final note about Ironeye. The Night Huntsman, the traitor we hunt, is Ironeye. Or, as the Duchess says, a different version of him.
These condemned valiantly faced down the night, but ultimately failed and surrendered to the darkness. They are, in fact, us. Worse still, they multiply through their marriage to the night, spreading from one world to the next. We must stop them before it's too late.
These condemned are Nightfarers who, like some of the Night Lords, abandoned their purpose after being seduced by the endless night. Or, as the Duchess put it, versions of you that surrendered to darkness. That would explain the use of the Ironeye, instead of just Ironeye, as though he were stripped of any sense of self, as if he were a title, not a person, because other versions of himself had walked that same path in other worlds. But that may just be me reading too much into the grammar. It's fascinating that when we wear his remembrance skin, one of our eyes glows with a ghostly light. The traitor tells us Ironeye felt the same pleasure in the night.
You have undergone the same. You have the same eyes.
As if Ironeye had changed, transformed by the pleasure of the endless night. He doesn't want to die, but more importantly, he doesn't want his kind to die. It may be selfish, but by destroying the vessel in the end, he acts not for himself, but for his kind, for the Fellowship, for all touched by death. Ironeye may come across as a villain, a deceptive figure hiding among the Nightfarers, but when you think about it, Nightfarers are complex. They carry trauma, dilemmas, and personal motivations. The recluse took away the Guardian's tribe's ability to fly. Wider preserves the night, without rain of course, to protect his sister's life. In that sense, Ironeye is not so different. The Archer saw the others as temporary allies, not friends, not equals, because Ironeye truly wasn't like anyone else. The night is far from over. And so his story ends. Perhaps even forgetting that some members of the Fellowship might have truly longed for rest from this twisted world. We'll never know. If you enjoyed this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Until next time, bye!